Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast for 2nd of March 2023. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal. Mark, as you introed that, you had the dulcet tones of a BBC news presenter. I wonder if you're going to be planning a little moonlighting away from the ghostwriting.
We'll see about that. I have been on the BBC radio a few times. Back when I lived in London, I'd often get a call when there was some sort of CX or IT outsourcing story and they wanted someone to comment on it. But quite often I'd end up going down to the BBC and then they'd run out of time for the story anyway.
That is very annoying. I remember the first time I was asked to be on TV in London, and it was for one of the major networks. They sent a car to pick me up at my office, and I showed up. I was hustled up the elevators to the studio. I was literally marched into the studio, sat down, had a mic put on me, they had an earpiece put into my ear. I started hearing questions, I started answering them. Then the light went off and they hustled me out back to the car. And the whole thing happened within about a 10-minute period. It was surreal, but kind of cool when I look back on it.
Yeah. At least it wasn't like that guy who went to the BBC for a job interview and then he was mistaken for a guest on the live TV news and he ended up answering questions on the news and thinking it was part of the job interview.
Okay, that's got a Seinfeld episode written all over it, but we're talking today to a guest who is based in Florida, Mark, Nathan Muniz, who is the proprietor of 24/7 Secretary. Now, this is a contact center that's got a big deployment, a big series of workstations in the Philippines. Nathan is one heck of a nice guy. We got to know each other over the course of the past several months on LinkedIn. He and I connected based on the weekly 1980s polls I do every Friday morning. And what we found very quickly was not only did we have a shared appreciation of 1980s pop culture, but Nathan is also a big proponent of impact sourcing. Now, he'd seen an article that I had published on the Ryan Strategic Advisory blog, and it was all to do with the impact sourcing business model and so forth. He was just transfixed by it because of the fact that he's been working using this business model for a while, but he didn't know the extent to which impact sourcing had really gained traction in other countries. So we thought it would be interesting to sit down over the course of a Zoom call and talk a little bit about what he's up to in regards to the Philippines.
Well, and we've been talking about this on a couple of other episodes recently as well. So it's good to get a different perspective. It's been a while since we talked about this in South Africa, but very recently we were doing the exploration of Televerde and hiring people straight out of prison. So, it's clear that across this industry, it's possible to create opportunities for people to get into decent employment.
Without a shadow of a doubt, Mark. And I think that something that really hit home for me in the discussion with Nathan that we conducted just in the last day or two is the fact that Nathan talked not just about obviously the strong results that the impact sourcing model was able to garner for 24/7 Secretary. He also chatted a little bit about what the literal impact was on the community around the contact center. And for me, it was really stark the way he compared what the contact center neighborhood was like maybe 2 or 3 years before they set up this impact sourcing model, where literally you would be worried about walking down the street after 6 p.m. And now you've got a bustling community where people are looking after their homes. You've got nice shops. You've got nice restaurants that are set up. He said there's been a big transformation based on the fact that they've been able to try and work hard to find individuals who come from marginalized or more challenged backgrounds, give them employment, and that's had a major multiplier effect on the community.
Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes we don't see the immediate financial benefit of this kind of community involvement. But when you sort of look in the round or over the long term, it's clearly there. And a major company I can think of off the top of my head is Target. The Target, the retail chain in the US, they give their individual store managers a lot of freedom and leeway to do events and participate in the local community. And they find that it really helps boost the brand of the store, even though sometimes they can be very small events. But there's many occasions where there'll be a big snowstorm in town and they'll open up the store and just serve people free coffee and stuff like that. And you know, the extent to which this can actually improve the brand is really astonishing.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And from the perspective of what Nathan has described with regards to 24/7 secretary, there has been a great effect for not just the agents, but for the community. And I think what it does too, Mark, importantly, as you mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of talk about this business model being centered on particular parts of Africa. What it shows is that it can also be drawn into other more traditional locations where BPO work is being done. And it can be applied in a very effective manner.
Okay, so why don't we go straight to the interview with Nathan Muniz?
Looking forward to it. Thanks. And this week on the CX Files, we're very excited to welcome Nathan Muniz, who is with 24/7 Secretary. Although, Nathan, in the lead up to this discussion, which I have to say I've been looking forward to for some time, considering that we've been actively bantering back and forth on LinkedIn the past several months, and I can't believe it's taken this long to actually get one-on-one. You told me that you are very diversified in terms of your business interests, not just involved in the customer experience sector, but also in the transportation sector. Is that not correct?
Yes, Peter. I've been in the transportation business since 2006, and that led into our customer service business offshore. So the transportation business had some needs with call center agents and dispatch. And to answer those needs, we went to my wife's native neighborhood in the Philippines and started our own contact center.
Well, how exciting is that? You know, it's funny. Somebody said to me one time, nobody ever thinks about getting into the contact center or aspires to get into it. They fall into it, but once they get in, they don't want to leave.
Oh, well, we fell into it, and it was a perfect answer to our needs. We weren't able to get operators here in Florida. Our business was ever growing, even during the recession. Just the fact that the state here has been growing nonstop. So being in transportation, needing dispatchers, my wife kept telling me, of course, she's always right, we should try to subcontract this to the Philippines. I finally listened. We did it, and it was a fantastic beginning. And our business just grew even more when we started handling our own calls.
So tell me a little bit about 24/7 Secretary, which is your contact center BPO operation. Maybe give us a bit of a backgrounder, and that'll provide some context for our broader discussion today.
Well, 24/7 Secretary is our derivative from our initial contact center. And where we take older buildings in our community and we repurpose them, and we are turning them into contact center and BPO spaces. So 24/7 Secretary is our full-time business for customer service. We do general contact center support, customer support, technical support, and anything really to do with BPO. We're interested in doing that with our contact center.
Okay, now you mentioned that the contact center facilities are based in the Philippines, and the reason that we're here today to let our listenership in on it from wherever they might be tuning in from around the world is to talk a little bit about the impact sourcing model that you have adopted, that you and your wife have adopted in terms of how you operate 24/7 Secretary. Now, for full disclosure, I think we had published an article at Ryan Strategic Advisory about this way of doing business, and you'd contacted me saying that you had been doing this for quite some time, and that led to us getting into touch and becoming digital friends, which we'll actually get to meet in face to face at CX Outsourcers later on this year, which is going to be very exciting. But maybe talk to us a little bit, Nathan, about how impact sourcing came about within the 24/7 Secretary context.
Sure. I really didn't know much about impact sourcing until I read your article. I learned so much reading that, and it really hit home because that was the basis of what our business had grown into. Our core values are community, commitment, and compassion, and it all begins with our community. And when we started building just our small contact center for our transportation company, slowly but surely we noticed changes in our area. Our employees were being employed by somebody that wasn't 4 hours away. That's the average commute time for a contact center worker. So they're in the community more, working more. Their family has improved. So we saw little changes within our employees, dressing better, uh, improving themselves, improving their families. And from then, more and more little changes just turned into much bigger changes in the community. So other investment was made by other parties. Businesses started developing right outside of our contact center, and our entire area just started changing. And it really just happened before our eyes.
It's crazy as you describe that, because it's almost like you can't really believe what you're seeing, can you, as the transformation is going about?
The only thing I can compare it to is we started our contact center and then it started growing. We started hiring more employees, and I had left for like 8 months and came back to the Philippines to do some training. And when we turned down our street, it was like the moment of the Wizard of Oz when it goes from black and white to in color. I couldn't believe the growth. There were shops. This was a neighborhood where I couldn't leave my car in the street because the gas would be stolen. It went from shops, market. There's a market now. There's just all kinds of little activity that's business and it's growth, and people are making money in a whole different way just because of our smaller contact center growing and employing more people in the community.
So let's talk a little bit about the community itself and the individuals that 24/7 Secretary looks to try and bring on board. So Nathan, if you were to describe what the typical background or typical profile of a new recruit would look like as they come into your operation, what would that be, generally speaking?
Well, what we do is when we have a new campaign that comes through our office, we put a feeler out and we see what kind of response we get, and we'll have two types of employees interested in working for us. We're able to tap into a large talent pool that's commuting 2 hours each way from Cavite, where we're located, to Makati, which is a major BPO hub. So we're able to tap into that community and say, hey, would you like to work in your own community? So we're able to get two types of employees, one that's already experienced in many different realms of BPO operations, or we get somebody who doesn't have any experience at all. There's several colleges nearby. So we'll get an untrained person who's never worked in a BPO. So we might not necessarily hire them right off the bat, but we will keep their information, get a nice group, maybe 20 or 30 candidates, and then start providing them training in-house to learn a good system of how to use our technology and how to speak properly on the phone.
Generally speaking, as you're looking to try and teach people the proper etiquette for dealing with customers overseas, as well as teaching the technology skills, how long does that onboarding process take?
It can take 1 month if they're. It really depends on how bad their habits are, and if they're younger, and they're already being educated and they're used to an educational structure, they can learn very quickly. They can learn in 30 days to start changing some of their accent and talk in more of a neutral tone. But if they're a little older and it'll take 2 or 3 months sometimes. But it's an ongoing process, and we're willing to be patient and try to help as many people in our community as possible. So we're willing to help, and we're willing to wait.
How have your clients taken this impact sourcing approach that 24/7 Secretary has championed? Was there any resistance when you started it? Have they grown to like it? Has it become part of what they expect from you?
Well, the biggest challenge, impact sourcing, it wasn't really our biggest focus, and it wasn't really our selling point up until recently. So we really never presented it in that manner. The biggest thing that our clients were attracted to is our price. Being offshore, we're much lower than the United States. We didn't really sell it as an impact sourcing type of an arrangement, but what we've been able to offer is total dedication from our employees. When we bring them in and we take them out of that long commute, they learn whatever program or whatever campaign they're in. They learn their campaign more and more. They grow with that business. They learn the total ins and outs because our attrition rate's so good. they're not quitting on us. They're just becoming a much more seasoned and much more better at providing customer service. It's just they continually grow and get better and better. So that's really been our strong point, is dedication and becoming an expert at whatever they're handling as far as each campaign.
Based on what you've seen with the agents that have been recruited through the impact sourcing model and have come through 24/7 Secretary, give me some examples of what some of these individuals have moved on towards. Have they moved up in the company? Have they gone on to other roles outside the firm in different sectors? What I'm trying to get at here, Nathan, is are we seeing almost like a net improvement in terms of what they're able to do in regards to career opportunities relative to somebody who wouldn't have been recruited from that background without a company as proactive as yours?
Well, there's always room for growth in our company, and all of our management staff started as operators. There were some of our original employees are still with us, just managing. Some of them are college students, and they work for us to supplement their tuition. So they get done with college, and then they're kind of at a crossroad with, well, I'm done with school, so what can I do? I've seen people finish their engineering degree. They stay with us for a long time and they still work for us. But I've seen so many people just improve themselves through maybe their own education or just learning how to do something different, and providing that knowledge has been probably the biggest impact, and learning and growing with our community. Just seeing people change just for the better has been the biggest thing I've seen as far as growth.
You raised the point a few minutes ago that I think you're bang on with, and that's the fact that I think traditionally this has not been a business model that many companies would have led with as a competitive advantage or as something that would differentiate them. That's rapidly changing. And I think there's more of a sense, not just that the outsourcers need to provide an impact sourcing model, but the buyers are looking for it. The clients want to work with socially responsible companies that take a view on improving the lives of those in the communities where they're based. So thinking a little bit about your experience, Nathan, any particular advice or points that you would give to an outsourcer that's looking to try and bring impact sourcing into part of what they do as a CX operator?
I would say look at the community where the operator is located at. If they're in a big downtown area and it's nothing but skyscrapers, find out where the agents are coming from. What's their commute time? Where are they finding their agents? Is it a big, because in the Philippines, it's such a intense operation. You've got massive buildings that are lit up all night, and that's the setting that the operator is in. So the commute and the setting, to me, would be prime questions and prime things to look into to see if this really is an impact sourcing type situation, or just kind of the typical core city being going through commuting and transporting each way. So I would look at facility and where the operators are commuting and coming from.
Yeah, because I think you raise an interesting point with that. It's not only, I think, socioeconomic situations people might be in, but there is quality of life there too. And if you're spending, and by the way, I've been in the traffic most recently in Manila, and that is no picnic. That is that's not something you want to be writing home about.
Well, were you in an automobile?
I was.
Okay, imagine on foot, tricycle, jeepney, bus, jeepney, tricycle, then on foot again to get to your workplace, and then go through and reverse that process to come home. And you've got children at home, you've got an elderly parent. There's a lot of multi-generational families living together in the Philippines. You've got all that to think about on that long and tedious commute, and then the money spent. You're spending money to go make money. All that is just a real waste of life. It's hours of someone's time that hopefully we can save.
Well, congratulations to you and to 24/7 Secretary for making this difference in the lives of people and helping them get some of that precious time back with family members, with friends. It's a real testament, and I'm glad that we were able to catch up today. Thanks for spending some time on the CX Files with us.
Hey, no problem, Peter. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.